Peace and blessings, everybody, and good morning on this Monday morning. New week, new intentions, new goals, and a new episode of what we do here every week, which is bringing you nonprofit content. I am Asia Nasir, founder and nonprofit strategist of my consulting firm, Utopian Enterprise Business Solutions, and author of my newly released book, Nonprofit Doesn't Mean No Profit, which you can get right now on Amazon. This week's topic is something that I think everyone has on their mind, thinking about whether you're in for-profit or nonprofit, but I specifically wanted to talk to my nonprofit clients, aspiring founders, and existing founders, which is what I do on a regular basis, which is truly help our nonprofit founders to truly fulfill their missions in real time, so that way they can truly impact the communities that they're looking to serve. And financing in any business is extremely crucial in doing that, even more so for nonprofits, because there are nuances that are very different to nonprofit to keep their doors open, to keep their services and programs going. So financing is a very, very important topic, and we've been recently seeing a lot of news on what's happening in the banking industry. And so today, for the first time through all of our weekly content, this is the first time that we actually have a guest. And I thought, why not bring my dear friend who is an expert in the financial field, has been in the industry for a very, very long time, and has a pulse of what's happening. And so I wanted to share that with, my audience here. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Michael Harris. Hey, Michael.
Hey, Asia, how are you?
I am doing wonderful. I am just so happy to have you here this morning. As I mentioned before, you have a plethora of, just knowledge in this industry. That's how we met. We met back in 2009 because I used to be in the financial industry working for Investors Bank. And that's how we met. So you've been in the industry for a very long time. You're still in the industry, working. So I said, why not have Mike come on and talk to, those that are, concerned, some of those that are optimistic, but either whatever the direction in which the audience is going, I would love for you to be able to speak to them. So before you do, please tell those that, those that are watching, what is your background, and tell them a little bit about Michael Harris.
So as you said, you and I met back in 2009 at Investors Bank. That wasn't the beginning of my banking career. I've been in banking close to 25 years now. I think it may be at 25 years. And over those years, I've done a whole, the saying is you've done it all. I've done it all, retail banking, back office banking. Right now, I'm still considered to be on the retail side. But over the years, probably over the last 10 years or so, I've developed what I would call a niche in the field of banking, and that is business development, which connects me to so many different things. Business and community development connects me to for-profit and non-profit business and their owners. And I really have developed a burden and a passion to help businesses grow and fulfill whatever their banking needs are. As you and I talked, your audience, I remember when all that Asi is doing right now was just an idea over lunch, because she and I were friends, and she was actually like a mentor to me when I was at Investors as new in that organization, and we would get to lunch, go to lunch frequently, and she would just vision cast. Hey, Michael, I see this, I see that, I want to do this, and I want to do that. And so to see her and to have followed her process over the years and to see all of it come to fruition is amazing, and it is a blessing. But it's also, what I've seen, Asia, in my industry as well, which is why I have such a passion for community development and business development, to see a small business owner, whether for profit or nonprofit, take one idea or a thought or a niche or something that they're passionate about, and then see it develop over the years. I understand that it doesn't happen by themselves. They can't do it by themselves. So from my perspective over the years, I've developed a passion to say, you know what, I want to partner with small businesses. I want to partner with organizations and help them get to wherever they need to get to, using whatever institution I've been at as my background, as the catalyst to provide products and resources, connections, whatever it takes to help a business owner or a nonprofit business owner, it doesn't matter, get to where they need to get to. So that's who I am. That's my life. That's my passion, and that's my goal.
Yeah, and you have been doing that, Mike. I mean, I've seen you through the years, and you and I both started in the big banks commercials, and then we both went into community banks where we felt that we can make more of an impact for the people that were we couldn't reach in the bigger banks. So I definitely know that path that you're taking and what you're doing, and we actually know mutual friends that you've actually helped
Yeah.
financially. So I know that you truly mean that as far as really wanting to work with those who have businesses. So let's just get right into as you know, my niche is nonprofit, so we'll be speaking from that perspective on the show, is really trying to help. And I think nonprofits have had a difficult time kind of navigating those waters in the financial industry. And I think a lot of it has to do is because they don't know what the banks are expecting from a nonprofit. So while it is a business, there are nuances that are very different as it relates to paper trail and, how do we receive money, and things like that. So, what would you say, first, let's talk about, and let's get the elephant out of the room with everything that's happening right now in the news and things like that. What is the status of the banking industry and your particular bank and where you're working and the work that you actually do?
The status of the banking industry, obviously, it's not what people say it is. Like, all of us have heard about, the failures, if you will, of a few of the big banks from at the beginning of the year. And then, I saw people on Facebook and social media, that I kind of had to go out there and correct, because I think our people should have knowledge, and they shouldn't be ignorant, and neither should we follow trends. Oh, the banks are failing, take your money out. Well, now let me assure you, all the audience, the banks are not failing, because if the banks are failing, then we're living in a whole different time, and your nonprofit or anything else is not the priority. So something else is going on. I mean, I'm talking about Walking Dead apocalyptic stuff.
Right.
So the U.S. economy is going to undergird the banking system, the financial system. Within that system, just like with anything else, just like with your nonprofit, people that are in charge of institutions make choices. I had to explain to somebody that banks make money from deposits. People bring in deposits to banks. Banks then take those deposits and lend those deposits out to other institutions in order to make money, from those deposits. And so what happens when the economy hears that a bank is failing or a bank has failed,
Right.
people come and grab that money out of that bank. So it's not the bank actually that failed that causes the rift. It's the reaction in the market that causes the rift. It's our reaction to it that impacts the stock market, that impacts all of these things. Because, like anything else, once we hear about something, kind of like a good restaurant, if you get a review that, hey, says don't eat there from one customer, the impact of that,
It can make a
can be
break.
huge. Exactly, because then that word gets out and nobody eats there anymore because one person had a bad experience. And that's kind of, in layman terms, what has happened in the marketplace is that people have responded to that by either taking their deposits out or really just not doing anything. And so the bank's response to that, the impact of it is, if a bank is not getting deposits, then it's not growing. It doesn't have the liquidity that it needs. Banks need your deposits to lend mortgages, to do business loans. That money comes from
And
not some
even and
secret.
even to offer and to even offer
Exactly,
foundation money to grants,
exactly,
to nonprofit organizations. Yeah. Hmm.
exactly. So it impacts everything. So this little bump in the marketplace is not just impacting the big banks, especially it's impacting the smaller banks, the regional banks, because we're smaller. Chase is a $3-4 trillion bank. Bank of America, Chase is the biggest bank in the world. Those are $1 trillion banks. The Bank of America's, the Chases, those are huge banks. And so they're feeling it, but the regional smaller banks are feeling it
Feeling it
the more,
more.
because we're just not as big. But I will say this. The small business community and especially nonprofits are really undergirded by the smaller banks and not the bigger banks, really. That people don't
Mm,
know that we are the ones who really cause the economy to move because a bank and again, I'm not disparaging any other institution, but let's use Chase or let's don't use the name. Let's say ABC Bank, the $1 trillion bank, who has a trillion customers. At any time, their brand and what they offer really drives who they are, but they can be very selective as to who they want to do
right.
business with. And
Mhm.
so the people that really need funds, need lending, need all of these things to build their businesses, when they can't get it there, they come to the smaller banks, the smaller ABC banks, the regional banks with the 30 branches, and they come to us, and we gladly give them the funds because we're closer to the community. So
Right.
I see what's happened over this last 6 months or so in this first or second quarter is even though the banking environment is stable, it has kind of contracted or retracted a little bit in terms of its activity and lending. And you guys are listening to the news and interest rates being higher because it's
Mm-hmm.
really trying to recover, liquidity. And the liquidity again is in deposits. If banks don't have liquidity, then they don't have the funds to lend.
Got it. So because people heard of what was happening and took money out, this is why interest rates have increased in order to recoup the money that people have taken out of the banks.
Exactly. The interest rates,
Mm,
they rocket because I mean, look what's going on in our government with regards to the debt ceiling. And again, I don't want to get all deep into economics, but the danger and the impact of the USA not paying its bills, if you will, like you hear, and then there's this deadline of the end of May to June 1st, which we're really coming up on. It
yes.
drives what's happening in the marketplace, and
Mm-hmm.
then rates skyrocket upwards. Banks
Right.
can't give you lower rates. They skyrocket upwards because they have to make money. They have to make money. And what they're actually trying to do is when they rise the rates is discourage lending, because, hey, we
Right.
don't have enough to lend. If I see if I needed $150 from you and you only had $75 or $100, and I said, hey, Asi, I need 150. You say, Mike, I don't have one. Are you going to go borrow an extra $50 to give me 150? Probably not. And
Right.
especially if borrowing that extra 150 means that you've got to pay it back quadruple at the rate
Exactly.
that you
Exactly.
borrowed to give to me. So then you say, hey, Mike, I'm sorry, I can't help you right now. Talk to me maybe in a few weeks. And so that's kind of what's going on in the banking industry, and it impacts every businesses, and it especially impacts the nonprofits. As you said, when you're approaching banks for grants, the funding just may not be available. It doesn't mean that they're not interested, but the funds may not be there during these times. When you need a small business loan, the funds may not be available. Doesn't mean that the bank doesn't have any money. It just means that at that moment they're scrutinizing and really, putting things in a box as to, who they're going to do business with at that moment.
So in speaking, you went right into where I wanted to go with this conversation. So like you were just saying, it's a little easier possibly for nonprofit organizations because of community banks being a little closer to the grid, with them in the community and everything like that. If they were to go to a community bank such as yourself, which you're with BCB Bank, right? If
Yeah.
they would go to your bank or any other community bank for that matter, and you said they're scrutinizing a little bit more with nonprofit and having the nuances that come with nonprofit, how we retain money as nonprofit organizations. What is it that the banks would be looking more or scrutinizing more for a nonprofit to say, okay, we need grant money or we need funding, we want to get a brick and mortar, so we want a mortgage or whatever. What would a nonprofit need to have in place right now and really have their things together so that way a bank could actually consider them?
So, I'll first start to say that again, banks are still giving grants. They are. They're still giving small grants. When I say the impact of grant, it doesn't mean they're not giving, because that money has been earmarked in banks like BCB banks. Have set money aside because they are community banks. They still want to be connected to the community. Hey, if deposits are important, that's where deposits are coming from, by their connections to the community. So that's never going to stop with any institution. Every institution, has a mandate, even a government mandate, with what we call, CRA,
Right.
Community Reinvestment Act, and that is, we want to be attached to LMI areas, low to moderate income areas, and we want to meet the needs and connect the needs of those people to the financial institution. So grants will always be available. What the economy may impact is how much may be available. Wherein, I might, and just from my experience, I might be able to, where in the past I could ask for $5,000 or $1,000 or 2,500, that may now be $500 or maybe $1,000. So the amount may be impacted, but not the participation. Banks still want to participate because we're not going to stay here. The economy is going to rebound, and we're going to get back to business as normal, because these things happen. It's the ebb and flow of the financial industry. And so, banks still want to stay engaged with the communities, with the nonprofits, the small business owners, because the nonprofits are the organizations that are touching the community. Like Asia, what you do is reaching people directly in the community. So we want to stay connected. We don't want to just stop. But what the impact will be is potentially how much, we'll invest in whatever it is you're doing. And I would say to your nonprofit owners that are listening, there's some key things. And this applies not just now, but it'll apply across the board. A couple of things. There are a lot of organizations. I can imagine that a lot of your nonprofit owners that are watching this all are doing something that have something to do with people development, community development, helping people meet a need that they have. What you have to always keep in mind, and this is sometimes a hard concept, because what we're doing is so passionate for us and it's so unique to us, that sometimes we think that we're the only ones in the room doing it.
Right.
And so that, to me, is what I've seen is the nonprofit owner, what I want to call it,
thinking that they are the all and be all of that particular passion or cause that they're championing. Yeah,
exactly. And so that's the thing that I see in a lot of nonprofit owners, is that they think that they're the only ones in the room doing it. And so what the bank sees that you don't see is the 10,000 other applications of people that are doing, listen to this, not exactly what you're doing, but similar to what you're doing.
Under the umbrella of the same thing that you're doing. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so what you have to understand about banks is they don't necessarily look at the uniqueness, they look at the umbrella.
Right.
So if there are 3 soup kitchens that are asking the bank for grants, your soup kitchen may really be like a unique way. We only feed people with one leg and one arm, and we know nobody else is doing that, But right. The bank isn't looking at that. The bank is looking at, we've given grants to 3 soup kitchens, and you're the 4th to come to ask. The bank then is going to make a decision. Do we need to add another soup kitchen under our umbrella of grants that we're giving? Okay, and if we decide to, hey, well, you know what, Asia is very unique under that. She's feeding homeless, and she's doing something very unique, even different from the other organizations that are feeding. Let's take a look at her. And so the scrutiny is going to come in when we scrutinize nonprofits. Is just the basics. Let's look at Asia's paperwork. Let's look at if she's filed, her 990s ever. Let's look at if she has a clear vision and mission plan. Let's look at if she has any skin in the game. show me what you've done up until this time to raise money. And I'm not talking about something written on a little notepad. I'm talking about an organized business plan that you can put in my hand, and that I can kind of look through. What has your success been over the past how many years that you've been doing it? What does your personal finances look like? What does your personal credit look like? Well, my credit is a little bad because I'm pouring all of my money into my nonprofit. There are things that happen in our credit that are understandable. It doesn't mean that you have to have a 700-800 credit score in order to get a grant. That's not what I'm saying. But all of those things could come into scrutiny if I'm looking to add another entity under this umbrella and release funds to you. Wherein in the past, or wherein if we're not in this particular time that we're in, I might say, hey, that is unique. I may not scrutinize it as much, but I might say, hey, you know what? Yeah, that is unique. I will, give a grant to that particular organization. So the scrutiny that's out there now is really making the owner accountable. Because what I see is everybody wants money, but then when my conversation back to you is, what have you done? And you get, oh, I've done this and that. Show me.
Right. So it's really, so what you're suggesting, if I'm hearing you correctly, Mike, is really, advising nonprofit founders is to document the things that they're doing. How much they put into this fundraiser, how much they raised at this fundraiser, how many people attended, how many fundraisers have you done this year? Talking about that skin in the game, right? So how many fundraisers, how many corporate partnerships have you developed that are, giving money to your nonprofit organization? So if you have, where, like you were saying, you need maybe, I don't know, 50,000, and you've raised 20,000 of it. That would be something that the bank would want to see documentation of. This is pledge money that has come in. These are fundraisers that we've done, and we've been able to raise this amount of money, but we still need another 30,000 or whatever the difference is. So that's really what they're looking for. Even so, again, still like a for-profit business, it's the success of the nonprofit. So you mentioned a really good point. You said looking at documentation, making sure the documentation, and this is something that I start my nonprofit masterclasses on, is making sure your paperwork is in order. So what I have found, especially in the grassroots nonprofits, they have the idea of a nonprofit, but they have not made it official. And so they want to go, they haven't registered with the state and things like that. So when they go to a bank, please explain to those that are watching, that are aspiring founders, or those that are existing but haven't done the documentation, how important are those documents of registering your business, getting your EIN, getting that 501c3, tax exempt status? How important is that when they're approaching a financial institution?
I'll say this, not only are they important, but they are the thing that will make or break. I have in my notes here, your relationship with your bank. And like you, I say, you've worked in banking, so some of these things you've circumvented just because of your financial knowledge. You actually opened these accounts at one particular time. So as you began yours, a lot of these things you didn't have these issues because you knew. But like you said, for a lot of laity out there who actually have an idea and actually start working in the idea before they think to do these things, it is vital. Because I want to say to your audience, not every bank deserves or is a fit for your nonprofit. I'll say it again. Not every bank deserves your relationship or is a fit for your nonprofit. A bank is not a bank is not a bank. It is in a sense of product offering, checking account, savings account, but the culture of banks are different from bank to bank. And you might think that Chase, and again, I don't want to use the word, let's say ABC Bank. You might think that ABC Bank, because they're on commercials, you see them all the time.
They're big, they're national, they're everywhere, right?
Exactly, is the bank for you. But I want to tell your audience, and some of you have opened accounts at those banks, you need to really shop around, because especially for nonprofits or small business owners, the bank that you choose is going to help you inform what your nonprofit is going to be in the future. And if you just think the big shiny ABC Bank is good because they're on every corner, they're always open. I had somebody tell me the other day, a nonprofit person who subsequently came to me and said, "Hey, Mike, you were right. That this I'm not going to say the bank names, but America's most convenient banks that's open 7 days a week." I said to them, I said, well, I was having a discussion with them about, a relationship. I said, I'd like for you to grow your relationship with BCB and, and maybe bring over your main operating account so that, because I had already given this individual, not just a grant, but I given them a small business loan, 75,000.
Wow.
I gave them 75,000 last year, and I said to them, I said, I don't mean to sound snarky or sarcastic. I said, but the bank that's so convenient for you wouldn't give you that money.
Absolutely. I love this.
I
I
did.
think this is so.
And then hold on real quick. And then their response was, they're so convenient. I said, but what is convenience? It's convenience that you can just walk in, or it's convenience that when your nonprofit needed something, that my little old bank, and is the one who stood up tall and believed in what you did and actually, shook your hand and gave you what you needed. They came back to me the other day. They said, Mike, I thought about what you said, and you're absolutely right. So how I convey that message to you guys that are listening, your business registration, your tax ID, your EIN, your 501c3, stop what you're doing. You'll be the enemy of your vision and all that you see if you don't take time out to make it formal. And formality, there's no circumventing that, because when you walk into a bank, if you have just one of those, I got my 501c3, you have to have it all. Because if you don't have that, then nobody's going to deal with you. You can be saving people and doing all of those wonderful things, but if it doesn't have definition to it, if it's not definitive, if I can't look at it and scrutinize it, because understand, while you're doing that, there's somebody trying to defraud the banking system in the name of what you're doing. And that has happened. Banks have given out millions, billions of dollars to people that weren't what they said they
worthy.
Were. Because Asia remembers a time in banking when banks really didn't scrutinize nonprofits like that.
Especially nonprofits, right?
Exactly.
We just believe that this is goodwill, and right.
Yeah, especially nonprofits. So they just gave money and didn't scrutinize it. But then in doing that, you come to find out, this person isn't doing what they said that they would do. So the banks then changed and said, hey, now we really have to scrutinize what you're doing, how you're doing it, how long you've been doing it. And it has to be on black and white. So we know that the state says that you're doing it. The IRS says that you're doing it. And so if they all agree that you're doing it, then we say, okay, you're doing it. And that's just step one. Now that I know that you're really doing it, that just gets me in the door. That just gets a real conversation. That just gets a bank account opened. But now we can talk.
Right. So when you talk about relationship, I talk about that in my book, as far as developing a relationship with your financial institution, in the chapter talking about when if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And then I also talk about nurturing the donor relationship. So, nonprofit, I really try to emphasize relationship building. What advice can you give to those that are listening of how they can nurture their their relationship with their financial institution, if especially if they're doing what you say, which is, I want to be able to kind of basically interview, or basically shop around, as you said, and they want to nurture. What type of things should they be looking for or looking to do with the bank that they finally do choose? What is it that they should be looking for if they want to choose a bank that's a good fit for them? And then once they do, what should they do to nurture that relationship?
If I were the individual watching, if I was starting a nonprofit, of which I have my own, I would interview the bank, that I'm choosing. I would go to ABC Bank and talk to the branch manager and say, what's your culture, what's your view on nonprofit and your community, and let them tell you, because you'll discover whether or not they're just talking or whether or not it's a bank that's really about community, and because if it's not about community, then they're not going to pay any attention to you, and that
Exactly.
so that's one thing. So once you find out, hey, okay, yeah, this bank is about community. It's funny you asked that question, because I have written down in my notes, is that not only don't cut corners, but diversity is important for a nonprofit owner. And by diversity, I mean if you have a cause that you want to champion, and you want support from your bank, then you better be at the front of the line supporting that institution, bringing your whatever it is you do to. And how do you do that? Again, a conversation with a branch manager, and Asi and I have been branch managers, and the branch manager in an institution is literally the person with the feet on the street, right? Asi, we
Yes.
drove the things that our branches and our employees
We
participated in.
supported and we
Yes,
supported our nonprofit customers by going to their fundraisers, by going, and participating and volunteering and bringing our staff to volunteer and help out. So absolutely. Yeah.
so, and I say that to say you can't walk into your bank once every 3 months to make a deposit. I know we're in an online banking age and electronic banking, but for a nonprofit, that's a killer for you. If you're watching, especially if you're new, that's a killer for you. Just going all electronic. I don't go in the bank. I just everything I need to do is online. Well,
Mm,
what's that doing? It's in personalizing what you're doing. That branch manager needs to know what you're doing. Even if you walk in and say, "Hey, can I take you to lunch or and talk about what I'm doing in the community where your branch is located, and potentially how that can impact your deposits?" I meet with every quarter 300 people in the community, and we do this, we do that. I'm thinking that if we had a partnership, that maybe you could come and talk to some of my people about opening up checking accounts and savings accounts. And that branch manager, like me and Asa, would be like,
financial literacy.
"Yeah,
Yes.
man, I'm sure we
Financial
want to
literacy.
talk." Exactly. But if you don't have a
Absolutely.
relationship with your bank, if you don't know that branch manager literally, and if they don't know who you are, then when you come and ask for a grant, remember, you're not the only one in the room asking. 100 people before you have come and asked that same branch manager, can you put an ad here? Can you give here? Can and honestly, there's a budget and we can't give to everyone, and they can't give to everyone. But if you haven't gone personally and established a relationship and connected that institution to what you're doing in a way that's beneficial, not just to you, but to them, then you haven't done your part. It's not just
Absolutely.
about you. It's about, I have it here, it's about networking and who you're connected to. And it's not because
Absolutely.
if you're going to grow your nonprofit, sometimes you'll have to connect to things that you may not necessarily like, and maybe even people that you may not necessarily like.
Yeah.
But remember,
Yeah.
it's about fulfilling your vision and getting done what you need to get done for the people that you
Absolutely.
want to help. I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. No, it does. It absolutely answers my question. I actually write about that in my book. Once again, I talk about nurturing those relationships in the community with those, and you and I both knew him because he was our vice president at Investors Bank, and it was Mr. Dominic Kama. He came to
Hmm.
one of the events that I did at my branch in Little Morris Plains, and he came as the CFO of the company
Hmm.
came to my event, and one of the things that he told me. And this was just when he had just closed a multi-million-dollar deal. And I asked him, and it goes to right what you're saying, Mike, and right what I wrote in my book, which is when something is a good deal, when you know you've nurtured a great relationship, is when both parties are benefiting.
Mm.
When
Wow.
both parties, and that was what Dominic said. Dominic said that's how I'm able to close these deals, is because I always go into it with the mindset of not only am I going to benefit, but how is the other company or the other bank going to benefit from what we're about to do. So I love what you just said, and I think this is what is lacking, especially in grassroots nonprofits. We, they don't go and introduce themselves. We don't know what you're doing on a personal level. We can't get involved and support you on different levels. So it's not just grant funding, but for nonprofits, you need volunteers.
Yes.
You need programs sometimes that you don't have the budget for. So if you're looking, like you said, and most of my clients, they're doing something for the community, whether it's the youth, whether it's women, empowering people. Part of empowering people is financial literacy. No better place to go for banks and the staff to come and be able to facilitate those workshops. And as you mentioned, the CRA requires that these banks do this for absolutely no cost because you're a
Absolutely.
deposit holder. So these are just benefits that you can take from, nurturing your bank, and that's bringing exposure to your bank, to new clients, for people to be able to come. So it's a win-win for everybody. So I love what you just said as far as nurturing and both, being able to. So as we're coming up to, our 45-minute mark, I would love for you, Mike, to be able to just give some tips. I mean, just this is you speaking, just some things that you want to, those that are listening. We got some people that are thumbs up and stuff like that. So, I would, right. So I want you to, close our discussion this morning with what are some things that we haven't discussed yet that you want to make sure that they walk away knowing, food for thought. This is something that we need to go back to our board of directors and say, hey, we got to do this differently as it relates to our finances. What tips would you give?
Again, I'll drill down on get involved in your community. If you're not on any boards in your community or anything, then go back and do that. You need to have a presence wherever it is you're trying to serve, whatever people you're trying to serve. You need to have
Chamber of Commerce, something.
Absolutely. You need to be a part of that. Number two, don't cut corners. Don't cut corners to help people. Don't cut corners to help people, because in the long run, you might help them temporarily, but in the long run, you'll not be able to help a whole lot of people because you cut corners early. And what does cutting corners look like? Cutting corners looks like not taking the extra steps. Don't go for the quick money. I know, listen, you're a nonprofit and you got a passion. That quick money is out there, but you don't want that. You want to invest long term. So everything that you're doing, know that, again, I've watched Asia do this. Everything you're doing is investing in the long term of what you're doing and not the short term. There's this saying, hey, give a person a fish, they'll eat for a day. Teach them how to fish, they'll eat for a lifetime. And what your nonprofit wants to do is teach people how to fish. And you want to actually be that. You want the long term. You don't just want the short term results, but you want to continue and you want to keep going. So I would share those. I think those are two things. And of course, your personal finances, it's a given. And I don't want you to be discouraged. If you're watching this, you might say, oh, my personal finances aren't together. It's not a hindrance. It's not a stop. It's not a, but it's a be aware and make definitive steps towards fixing it. Your personal credit and all of those things, will certainly have an impact. And we all fall into, hey, I'm a banker, and there's been times my personal credit has been horrible. I've been it's life. And so that doesn't stop you from going forward. Life is life, but being aware that when you're a nonprofit and you know that your organization operates by somebody literally giving to you because you're a nonprofit,
Absolutely.
So you're dependent upon people benevolently seeing you as an entity that I want to invest my corporate finances in. Understand that you have to operate a certain way because you're not for profit. And those are two different distinctions. For profit, I can hustle and make money any way I can. Nonprofit, not so very much. You're boxed into your vision and your goals. And stick with your vision and your goals. Don't go outside them. Don't compromise them just to get money, just to raise money. Whatever your vision is, stick with it. That's your goal. Yeah. And don't go outside it just to get money. And I know things will get tough and things, I just need that, but don't do it. Don't do it.
And I think these are good points that you make. And I think, to your point, Mike, for nonprofit, founders, if you find that your credit is not, up to par or what you, want it to be, that's a discussion that you can have with that branch manager, with that bank, is to review your credit and say, hey, look, I'm trying to, do this or that. especially a lot of nonprofit, they're looking for that brick and mortar for some of them. And some of them is absolutely essential that they have a brick and mortar. And if that's their goal, then, map out a plan with your banker, with your financial institution of how you're going to build your credit. And this is what I talk about with strategic planning. Everything that you desire, you may have short-term goals and you can do those fundraisers and knock them out. Some other things are going to be long-term goals. And those long-term goals are things that you should be partnering with your financial institution to see how they can help you with that. If there are things that are hindering you, you can have that discussion and then go back to your team and say, hey, this is what we got to work on. The bank is saying this is what we got to fix. So that can be the focus, so that way you have direction. And I tell my clients all the time, I'm for I love the story, The Three Little Pigs. Mm-hmm. Don't build your nonprofit on straws and sticks. Build your nonprofit brick by brick, because as you can see just in that story, it sounds cliche, it sounds cheesy, but it's true. You build it on straws and sticks, it's not going to have the longevity. But if you build it brick by brick, while it might take you a little longer, you might have to do more work. In the end, it stands the test of time. It leaves the legacy that, you as a nonprofit is truly looking to do. And a financial institution, a bank, can help you do that if you do what Mike just said. Yes, please do.
It made me think of a story that I was told. If I say the name, you guys would know this individual. But this individual had a nonprofit. He wanted to help people. He, opened an account at a bank, and, the bank kept denying him grants and everything. So, what he took the initiative to do? Not only did he have his nonprofit account at that bank, and every bit of money he deposited in, he went around in his community and the people that he knew and said, go to that bank and open up an account. I mean, every week he was coming in with 5 people to open an account. And in a month, that account turned into 50 accounts, and in 2 months. So much so that this one guy had like 100 people opening. And again, ICNI's branch managers know how impactful that is. And not only were they opening an account, had he by himself went to those individuals, he told the branch manager, I need 100 direct deposits forms, because I'm going to have the people in my community that I know that this is the bank that we're banking with, that are helping us provide the services that we're providing. And before you know it, this guy had these people banking with this bank, and that bank wrote that man a check that really was the foundation of what's a multi-million-dollar nonprofit organization right now, because they didn't ask him to do that, but he said, I'm going to get through to this bank and let them know. So he took the initiative. Hey, I know Ossie, I know Tom, I know Pete. Hey, you guys need to go bank with BCB Bank. You guys need to go bank with Chase Bank. That's where I got my account. And before you know it, all of these people were coming in, remember I told you at the start of this conversation earlier, what do banks love? They don't love people, they love deposits first.
Right.
You don't have any deposits, we don't love you, and so he made his nonprofit known to such degree that the head of that, they wrote him a check that was the foundation and the catalyst for what now is a multi-million-dollar nonprofit organization. So if I was a nonprofit owner, grassroots or not, I would knock on every door and say, hey, wherever it is, you bank with them. And I would make it known, hey, branch manager, the 5 people that came in today, now banks, have all this referral money and everything. So they track this stuff, right. You get I literally know banks right now, you get $25, $50
for every referral.
So not only is that money in your pocket, but because
that could be money going into your nonprofit that you're trying to build.
Listen, but I'll see it. This is serious. Banks, and for everybody watching, banks want deposits now. There is nothing more that you can do best for your bank than to bring in more deposits. And I literally know banks right now giving away, I think, $25 and $50 for a referral if that person opens an account. So not only is that money in your pocket for your nonprofit, you're literally saying to that branch manager, I'm growing your deposits by bringing customers in. Can I have a $5,000 grant? Can I have a $10,000? that branch manager like Ossie and I once did will go to the foundation
We're
and
gonna
say,
be that ambassador.
yeah, exactly. ABC Soup Kitchen is doing such and such. Can we have this money? This is what they're doing, and that organization
Absolutely.
is going to write the check just based upon the word of that branch manager, and that's just how it works.
Absolutely.
Not difficult at all.
We've done that before. I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes the
literally.
community foundation didn't know this nonprofit from a hole in the wall, but because that
Exactly.
branch manager spoke and was the ambassador and spokesperson for that nonprofit got that money. So,
Yeah.
and you're right, Mike. You and I have both been in that position. Mike, I want to really thank you for the tips that you gave. So, just to recap really short, build a relationship with your branch manager, your financial institution, and before you choose one, interview them. Do your due
Yes.
diligence to make sure, is this a good fit? Because convenience may be different for different people. So make sure that you understand what's most important to your nonprofit and get it and make sure that that's the bank that you choose, and then nurture that relationship. Don't cut corners, right? That's what you said?
Yes. Yeah. Don't
Don't
cut
cut
corners.
corners, right? Don't cut corners. Make sure that you're building your nonprofit brick by brick, so that way you have longevity. Short money or fast money, all money doesn't mean good money, right?
Yes.
All
Yes.
money
Yes.
doesn't mean good money. So making sure that you don't cut your corners. Make sure that you build your foundation solid. That means getting your documents, your paperwork, right,
Mm-hmm.
Mike? You said getting your
Yes.
paperwork. That's what's going to be able to just get you in the door. And that may mean you not getting the grant, because if you don't have certain documents, they may say, well, if you had this document, we'd be able to work with you. Without those documentations, that foundation to make your nonprofit official, you're not going to be able to have that financial conversation, that grant money, foundation money conversations that you want to have with your bank. And make sure you get involved in the community, network, get to know people, make those connections, and make sure your board members are doing the same. Make sure they're
Yeah.
connecting and bringing people to your nonprofit and bringing in awareness and visibility, and bring it back to the bank, and make sure that the bank is participating in workshops, participating and facilitating things, so that way it's bringing an awareness back to your bank and bringing deposits back into the bank, so
The
that way
big B
you can
word.
partner.
Yes.
Yes, right. So that way you can partner with each other. So that is our recap this morning. If you are interested in working with a bank, and you are in the New Jersey area, do you partner with any type of nonprofits that are outside of New Jersey?
We're mostly BCB Bank is mostly the tri-state area, New
Okay.
Jersey and New York. And depending on who it is, I could have a conversation, but mostly I'm in North Jersey, but New Jersey is my territory, so I'll work with anybody, New Jersey, New York, and then surrounding areas.
So I've been working with Mike. I don't push, for people. But Mike is somebody that I have literally seen. We work together in the bank, and Mike has, when I tell you integrity, Mike has integrity with his deposit holders, his customers. He really takes care of them. He's honest with them as well. And that's what I love. He's honest with his customers. So if you are shopping around, or if you're not happy with the bank that you're with because they're not paying attention to you, and you're trying to build a relationship, or you're trying to get in the door to talk to that manager and they don't have time for you, Mike, please tell those that are following, that are watching on YouTube as well. If you are in the New Jersey area, you're in the tri-state area, how can they get a hold of you, Mike?
Sure, I'll give you my email. My email is M as in Michael, my last name Harris, HARRIS at bcbbank.com. So M Harris at BCB, no, not BCB Bank, at BCB.com. M Harris at BCB.com. Yes. Yep.
Perfect. And I'm going to put it in the comments. So
Okay.
that's M as in Mary, or Mike, M as in Mike, Harris at
Yes.
bcb.com. Please reach out to Mike, make an appointment, meet with him, and see if this is going to be a good fit for you. But what I can guarantee you is he's going to be, he's going to speak with you with integrity, honesty, and he is going to work with you if you're willing to work with him. So, Mike, thank you so much.
You can also share my cell number in your comments as well.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, sure. That's 201 725 1399. That's 201 725 1399. You can just shoot me a text message.
Yeah, so you can shoot him a text message, email him, Make that appointment though, have that conversation and get the ball rolling so your finances can be, and you can be in the know of what's happening with your financial, institution as it relates to the big picture of what's happening. As I mentioned, Mike is honest and he will work with you at the level that you are and take you to the level that you need to be able to get your organization the funds that it needs. So for those that are watching and that continue to watch, our weekly content here with Utopian Enterprise Business Solutions, I thank you for coming again on Monday. Make this week the week that you're going to make changes. Go back to your team and see how you're going to, get your finances where they need to be. And
Let me
not
make a
last but not
correction.
least, yeah,
Let me
go
make
ahead.
a correction on my email. That's mharris@bcb.bank, not com. mharris@bcb.bank. I said .com. It's .bank.
It's .bank. Okay, so
Yes.
not .com. It's mharris@bcb.bank. That's how you need to contact him, or contact him on his cell phone number that he just left. So that way you'll be able to get that conversation going. And if you don't, if you can't reach out, if you want to reach out to me to get some consultation as it relates to really being able to get your nonprofit where it needs to be as far as the internal infrastructure, please reach out to me on my website at www.utopianenterprisebiz.com. And you can reach out to me. We can have an initial consultation. I will assess where you are and where you're looking to go, make some recommendations. And if last but not least, please go to Amazon, pick up this book, because a lot of what Mike was talking about today is in this book. Nonprofit doesn't mean no profit. Everyone enjoy your day, make it productive, and make an impact in your community. See you next week.
Thank you.